This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
We're back in the studio with Chenelle Hernandez with Successful Signings. And
can I ask one real quick question?
Absolutely, Matt.
So how do you juggle family life and 5 kids with your work?
Extremely carefully now, and sometimes I just throw my hands up and just stop doing things because I get overwhelmed. So
but it seems like you picked a good career where you have some flexibility,
right,
and you're obviously knowledgeable in what you do. So that
flexibility, that's an F word, Matt.
Well, to some degree, no.
Depends on how you're running your business. When I first got to California, we were beginning a brand new life from scratch in California. So in order to build that business, I was gone a lot.
Yeah,
I was gone a lot.
So that's what people get into real estate all the time. They're like, oh, I'm getting into it because I want a flexible career. I can make my own hours. And I'm like, okay, if that's what you want, this is not the career for you.
No, it's full-time. It's way more than full-time, for sure.
But you can take your kids with you wherever you go, right? Get in the car. We're going over here.
Not at first, but lately, yes. I've been super fortunate now that I have, like my 14-year-old joined me yesterday to a team meeting with a loan officer and his assistants.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. And she also joined me when I went to San Diego right after I spoke to you. And I was speaking on stage. So my 14-year-old got to come to, a fun business conference and meet other business owners and then see her mom speak on stage.
That's awesome.
Really neat. Yeah. That's really neat. But I just wanted to differentiate when people think, for example, realtors.
Here he goes. Go ahead. I'm ready.
You know what I'm going to say?
No, I know your passion. I said something and it triggered you. So here you go.
Oh my gosh.
Go ahead.
It didn't. So when people think about realtors, they think everybody's the same. They think, hey, the realtor that is on the radio station is the same as my niece that just got her license. I'm just going to use my niece, right? I'm going to help her out, get her, help her in the industry. But what they don't realize is how different real estate agents are. For example, Inman News came out with a report that in 2024, so last year, 71% of real estate agents did not do a single transaction, not one. And so what you have in the real estate industry is you have a lot of pretenders, you have a lot of part-timers, you have a lot of people who are dangerous because they don't really know what they're doing. I would imagine it's the same in your industry, Chenelle.
That's right.
Where it's the barrier to entry is low, but that doesn't mean all notaries are equally competent or equally good at what they do. And so what's great about your company is you have a bunch of things that differentiate you from your typical part-timer, flexible schedule notary.
Right. That's a very, very good point. And also part of what we look for when we subcontract out to other notaries. And as our company is absolutely full-time, again, even just being a business owner or a realtor like you, we are more than full-time. It's not a 9 to 5. Our clients don't need us 9 to 5. It's, I won't say 24 hours, but it's close to it. We go above and beyond. We make sure documents get hand delivered when we can. We keep them out of FedEx. We've driven long.
Wait, speak to that really quick. So why out of FedEx?
Well, sometimes they have to if they're coming from Nevada or Hawaii or somewhere far away. But we're in California. We're based in California, and a lot of our clients are based in California. So we'll have signings that are in the Bay Area or out on the coast or even down in Santa Barbara. And if what has happened in the past, if something occurs where maybe the signer was late or, just the signer wasn't available until a certain time, but there is no FedEx at that time, and the title company needs the original documents back in their office the following morning in order to close. And recording times are typically pretty early. They can be 11 a.m., 12 p.m., so it doesn't leave a lot of time to work with. Plus, those documents have to get processed by the time they get back. FedEx is used and is very helpful. It can be very reliable. But if we're shipping documents from Elk Grove to Auburn, that's a drive that we can do without sending documents to Tennessee, which is what happens when they go into FedEx. They have their own security and logistics system that involves sending packages to a hub before they come back to their destination. And a lot of packages end up getting stuck in Tennessee if there's a storm, and there have been delays for that reason. So as much as we can, possibly locally, we will not use FedEx labels, even if they're given to us by our clients.
So just to clarify, if somebody does a sign in Elk Grove, and they then send it out to FedEx, it goes to Tennessee and then comes back to California?
That's right.
That's crazy. Right. So, but you guys go to great lengths, you mentioned, to not rely on FedEx.
That's right. If it's local within, from Placerville to Yuba City or anywhere in that range, we will make sure those documents are hand delivered as much as we can. And additionally, if FedEx was missed or it just wasn't available.
Like you missed the cutoff.
Yeah, if someone missed the cutoff or if it just wasn't available, maybe some rural areas have very early cutoffs. There are some that are as early as 8 or 10 in the morning, and it's not even a FedEx office. It's some pack and ship because FedEx office doesn't exist in that location.
Yeah.
We may have to drive our team from Sacramento, Roseville to Paso Robles or Santa Barbara to pick up those documents.
I love that because you were telling me a story to Santa Barbara, right?
Yes, I sent a teammate down to Santa Barbara. It was actually my sweet husband who made sure that our clients got the best service they could possibly get and close their deals and make their clients happy.
So he drove to Santa Barbara.
That's right.
Picked up the docs and drove it back to the title
Immediately
company.
turned around and came back. It was probably the middle of the night when he got home, and then the next morning he would go to the title company.
When they open.
That's right.
Wow. That's above and beyond. That's not your typical notary. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Like, not all realtors are the same. Not all notaries are the same.
That's right.
Okay.
100%.
So you guys drove to Santa Barbara and back to get it done. And
Yes.
then I know the paperwork is in English, but what happens
Right.
if you're interacting with somebody who doesn't speak English? Like, what are the laws around that?
Right. Well, aside from laws, it's partially customer service as well. Many foreign language speakers might know some English enough to do real estate. Even if they have, some understanding of English, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable going through loan documents or even seller documents in their own language. So we want to provide that as much as possible. But if they're unable to speak English or communicate with the notary, it's actually against the law. California notaries have to be able to communicate, and the signer has to be able to understand the notary. They have to be able to understand each other.
So what if like the lender or the realtor speaks their language? Are they able to act as a translator, or does the notary still have to speak that language?
No, technically, the notary and the signer need to speak the same language so they can speak to each other without the use of a translator.
Got it.
Fortunately, we have many foreign language speakers on our team. We have a Cantonese speaker doing a signing today at 2 p.m. in Elk Grove. We have them all over the country. We have a lot of Spanish speakers, Russian. Let's see, we've done Vietnamese, and I think we've done Thai. There's been quite a few.
Wow. So again, not all notaries are the same.
Right.
And then, but there's been an uptick in fraud, especially for properties that are paid off or vacant land or things like that.
Right.
What have you ever experienced? Anybody on your team ever experienced any potential fraud, or how does that work? Like if you think, hey, not everything feels right about this situation. How do you? Because you have lots of quality control checks.
That's right.
How do you handle those types of situations?
We do have a lot of quality control checks. The fraud part, catching fraud rests partially on the notary's ability to verify the identity. The notary's main job as an officer of their respective states is to make sure the person who's in front of them is the person that they say they are to the best of their ability. If it was a very good fake ID, we might not know that, but there are certain things that the ID has to have in order for us to use it. And then, like we talked about before, if it was expired or it wasn't available, we could use credible witnesses. If we don't have the right ID, we do have to stop the signing. That can be uncomfortable. We don't want to let our clients down. But ultimately, that protects everyone. It protects the seller. It protects the realtor and the client, because if we notarize for someone and it really wasn't theirs, or there was something wrong with the ID, then later on that could come back in an audit. Well, that notary didn't notarize properly. Maybe the transaction would be invalidated and people would lose money. So we don't want to take that chance, even though we don't want to tell you we can't sign your signer. We would rather wait and have that person come back with credible witnesses or come back with the paper from the DMV, because even if they have their expired license and then their new paper with their new expiration date, if those license numbers match up, we can use their new paper from the DMV.
So you just use the photo from the old ID.
Right.
Okay, got it.
So there's multiple ways.
But what about are there ever any situations where you're like, hey, this just doesn't feel right? Like the IDs match up, everything's good, but you're like, I don't know if this is.
Yeah, well, one time we didn't even get to the ID part. We did have the title company went as far as going through the whole escrow process, drawing documents, getting a notary assignment, which is pretty far, as you know, can take a few weeks to get there. We sent a notary out in Texas who communicated with the signer over text message, and they confirmed the appointment. When the notary got to the location, the person who answered the door said, oh, well, he's not here. Michael's not here. And the notary was communicating with us and the title company throughout. And after a while, he just said, this just doesn't feel right. He said there was something off about the neighborhood and the way the person was confirming with him. And they didn't say Michael's not here. They didn't say he doesn't live here. They said Michael's not here. But there were enough weird things. We communicate with signers every day. Most people are very aware that there's signing. They're very, open and ready to sign.
Yeah.
So there was just a little bit, enough that was not normal for our notary to let us know this is not normal, along with a few things that had happened apparently during the escrow process. And the title company put those red flags together, and they said, we're just going to cancel this signing, tell the notary we're very sorry, we're going to just send him home. And then a couple weeks later, they let us know that they discovered it had been a fraudulent transaction. Someone was trying to sell a property. I think it was a vacant lot that wasn't theirs, which is the most common. It's either vacant lots or properties with no deed of trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So your notary caught that. Are there any other instances, like, for example, we had one recently, it's been a while now, but with Margaret, where Margaret's an escrow officer that we work with, who thought maybe there might be some memory issues. Like, do you ever experience those? Can those kill a signing?
They can. And again, that would be for everyone's protection. If you ended up signing with someone and then later they say that they don't remember, they didn't sign it, or they weren't there, it wasn't them, the audit would get pretty far. It could end up going to court. The notary would get subpoenaed. The notary records would be subpoenaed, which I do know a case personally where that has happened.
Wow.
So it's always best for the notary it's actually the notary's job, and it's not in real estate, but as a notary of anything, it's their job to make sure the person is not being coerced, they're not drunk or under medication, influence.
So they're celebrating for the new house and they started a little pre-party. They can't.
I mean, so we've seen people, have a drink. We've seen even realtors bring in wine and champagne. Yeah, of course, and even crack it open during the signing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing that says they're not allowed to have alcohol at the table, but they cannot be. They have to have their wits about them. I guess it's a little bit vague. I'm not sure the exact wording in like a notary handbook, but definitely
you have to know what you're doing.
They have to know what they're doing. They have to know what they're signing. They have to be able to communicate. I have had times where I've had to crack a joke with someone to make sure they were all good, because it was kind of unclear. Like maybe they'd been coached. If I asked them the date and they knew the date, they're, it typically with elderly or sick clients, that would be the concern. There will be a certain point at which notaries cannot notarize for someone anymore. So if you're taking care of somebody or someone in your family is ill, there is always going to be a point where they won't be able to be identified legally because maybe if they have dementia or they're under medication, if they're, with cancer, they have a lot of pain medication or something.
Yeah.
So there may be a point when you're taking care of someone, especially in your family, where you just want to get some paperwork in order before it's too late.
And typically that's a power of attorney or?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
POA?
Right, yes. And that would be something where, notaries technically are not allowed to give advice. We can't draw documents. That's a lawyer's job. But we certainly can tell you when we won't be able to notarize. And we won't be able to notarize if someone has severe dementia or if they're on a lot of medication and they can't remember things and they can't communicate and they don't know what the document is. We won't be able to notarize them.
And if they're under duress too,
That's
right? Do you have any stories with that? I mean, I don't. How did you tell?
I don't personally, but I've heard a few notaries, saying like, the wife didn't want to sign that grant deed. It seemed like, he was forcing her, not on our signings, but I've heard that where like, man, she really didn't want to sign that, and that can get really tricky because, with a grant deed, you are transferring all your rights off of a property. And if, one of my jobs as a notary or as a signing agent is to let you know what document this is, and I can't hide what it is from you. And if I'm a really good signing agent, most of my title companies want me to explain the documents to you. And so, there have been surprises at the table where someone didn't know they were going to be signing a grant deed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's wild. Well, good job. Good thing you were there. So.
Oh yeah. I remember one where she was, it was a restaurant and she was upstairs hollering that I'm not coming down there. That notary has to come up here. I'm not signing. And it was quite early in my career, but all I could remember thinking was I'm not going to be made to come up to her bedroom. So when she's ready, she can come down here. And she eventually did, but it was it was a lot of yelling and her husband had a whole thing about it. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You should write a book. Confessions of a notary.
Notaries talk about it all the time. They've got stories, definitely. Notaries have a lot of stories.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a pleasure having you. And if you want to reach out to Chenelle, what's the best way?
The best way for escrow or real estate purposes is just to loop us in on an email, info@mysuccessfulsignings.com. You can, email me there too if you're interested in becoming a notary. I have my Instagram at Chenelle Hernandez.
And of
Quick
course,
question: if somebody is interested, what are you looking for?
Well, there's two things. To work with our team, we typically do hire, mostly veteran notaries that are going to help represent us very well at the table. We want to present our realtors and escrow officers with, the best possible. I have fortunately become in a position in the notary community where I can help people get started from the very beginning. I can tell them exactly how I learned about it from that podcast back in Georgia all the way to now, where I'm actually an ambassador of something called the loan signing system. That was the course that I learned about back in Georgia, and now the coach of that course made me an ambassador. So I have access to a lot of resources, Facebook groups, holding notary meetups in Sacramento where we can all get together and teach them the tips and tricks and help them get started.
Now you're doing your own networking mixers for notaries.
Kind of, yes. I mean, I've been holding notary meetups, and I'm going to do more of them this year. I wouldn't necessarily call them my own. It's definitely a team effort because I have a really good coach.
Love it. Love it. Well, hey, if you have any questions, info@successfulsignings.com, or just reach out to us at Made for More Realty and we'll get you connected. Thanks again, Chenelle.
Thank you.
So why were they voted #1 team in Roseville for the past 3 years? Why do they have more 5-star Google reviews than anyone else? Maybe it's because they sell homes faster and for more money. Get 3 cash offers for your home in as-is condition. Just Google Johnny Jennings with Made for More Realty and get more for your home.